Hi everyone, I hope you can see me. It's Millie Hill here, and I'm going live in the baby show group. I'm just gonna wait for a moment and just see if anyone pops up. Aha, it looks like someone's watching. That's good. So hi, good. It's always good to know when you go live, isn't it, that there is somebody else out there. It's strange enough to be sat chatting away to yourself, but it's even stranger when you don't know whether anyone's actually listening. Hi Amy, thanks for saying hello. Hi, oh, and another Amy as well. Hi. So hi everyone, it's really good to be here. Normally at this time of year, I am at the baby show in Birmingham at the NEC. So obviously today I'm not, and it's hard, isn't it? It's hard when our plans have to change and when life isn't what we were expecting it to be. So that's what I've come on to talk about today. I'm Millie Hill. I'm the author of the Positive Birth book and Give Birth Like a Feminist. And I'm also the founder of the Positive Birth movement, which, if you don't know about it, is a network of groups that are currently running online. So if you go to the website www.positivebirthmovement.org, you can find your nearest Positive Birth Movement group and hopefully be able to have a Zoom with them until we can all meet in real life again. So yeah, today I'm talking about positive birth in a pandemic, and what does it cope? Trying to unwonk myself as well. How do we cope when things aren't what we were hoping for? And I think it's really, really interesting. It's a really, really tough time to be pregnant and to be. Hi Chloe, thanks for reading my book. Thanks, a nice comment to read. It's a really tough time to be pregnant at the moment, and it's a really tough time for everybody. And it's really, really difficult to know that what you're hoping to happen might not happen and might be different. When the pandemic first started to gather pace, and I, like everybody else, had to kind of get my head around it. My initial reaction was to feel, wow, I don't have anything relevant to say to this situation. I don't know how to navigate positive birth anymore. My book is not relevant. I'm not relevant. I'm lost. And perhaps that's quite a common response from people. But what I then realised was that actually, although everything had changed, in many ways nothing had changed, because what pregnant women still need is to think about, how can I have a positive birth in any situation? Positive birth is not about natural birth, vaginal birth, candlelit birth, water birth, home birth, although some people make the mistake of thinking that. All those kinds of births may very well be positive, but you don't have to tick any particular kind of box to have a positive birth experience. So preparing for positive birth is not about setting your sights on a very specific type of birth and becoming very fixed in your thinking about, you must have this, otherwise you won't feel like you've had a positive birth experience. Positive birth is about inner preparation and coming to an understanding of your physiology as a woman and of your mindset, so that when you do come to have your baby, even if plans have to change, even if you end up giving birth in a place that wasn't the place that was your number one choice, even if your plan A goes out the window, you can still have a positive birth. So once I started thinking like that, I realized that actually, the message that I've been talking about for nearly a decade now is actually still really relevant. So that's what I'm here to try and talk about today, and just to try and inspire you, if you are pregnant, into feeling that all is not lost, because I think that that's, it is a really, really, really tough situation in which to prepare to do something which was already quite a big challenge for you. Birth terrifies a lot of people. A lot of people are very scared of birth. Hi Nisha, thanks for that lovely comment. And it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to be daunted. And that's one of the first things that I wanted to say. And I was also thinking about this today before I came on, because I know there've been some technical hitches, in the baby show page today, and then I started to feel worried and like, how am I going to cope with this? And all of these things, we have to try and reframe them and think, okay, this is a challenge. This is not what I expected. How can I still get through this situation? What coping mechanisms do I have? However, I really think it's important, and I don't hear this that much sometimes, is what I do think is important is to acknowledge, first of all, before you start to get strong and get positive and get proactive and get thinking about how can I fix this situation for myself, I do think it's really important to spend a little bit of time just acknowledging how hard this is and giving yourself a bit of a break. Being pregnant right now is really, really challenging. Everybody in the world is finding this situation challenging, whether they're pregnant or not. And it's okay for you to feel, you know, a range of negative emotions. Myself and hypnobirthing specialist Sophie Fletcher have put together a pack, which we called the Rescue Pack, to help people who are pregnant right now. It's like a little online course that you can do that gives you lots of different tools and insights and exercises and hypnobirthing downloads that are specifically about giving birth in a pandemic. And I think you can find a link to that in the album section of this page. But the first section of that pack is about acknowledging feelings and honouring feelings. And I think that's a good place to start. It's important, you know, it's like if you've had a previous birth that's been difficult or traumatic, I always say to women, don't worry about the next birth yet. Start with that. Process some of that. Do some talking, writing, reading, thinking, crying, processing of that experience before you then try to move forward to the next challenge. And I think for everyone who's pregnant right now, it's not a bad idea just to spend some time being kind to yourself and thinking, well, am I allowed to swear on this? But you know, bollocks. This is really because it is, isn't it? You know, this is not what you ordered. You didn't want to have give birth under a lockdown, and you didn't want to have an added layer of complexity to it all. So yeah, that's the first thing I would say to you, is just spend some time being kind to yourself, honouring those feelings, you know, being honest. It's normal to feel this way. It doesn't make you weak or negative in any way. If you feel, you know, upset, if you feel scared, if you feel yes to swearing, Chloe, you know, if you feel sad, if you feel disappointed, if you feel worried for the future, if you feel worried about your baby, then you might be feeling worried about being worried. You know, it's okay to feel all these feelings, and to feel a little bit sad maybe that you have to deal with this problem, as well as the already really daunting situation of giving birth. I speak at the baby show every, well, most times for the past 3 years I've been at every one, I think, and I always talk, you know, about how so many people are already really daunted and afraid of giving birth, and I was one of those people. That's kind of how I've ended up doing what I do and why I ended up writing the Positive Birth book. If you've read it, you'll know that I talk about how terrified I was, you know, when I was first pregnant, and how I felt like I'd got drunk, agreed to do a parachute jump, and then woken up and the aeroplane was already kind of circling. But, you know, in that situation, you could actually turn around and say, do you know what, I don't really think I want to do this parachute jump anymore. But when you're having a baby, you absolutely somehow have to go through with it, don't you? So it's really, really, really daunting, and it's okay to be afraid. But if you are afraid, which is normal, one of the things I want you to do is to challenge your beliefs that you have about what birth will be like, and just spend a bit of time thinking about where you got the information that you have about what giving birth will be like, and just start to unpick it a little bit. Many people have got negative messages about birth from the story they were told about their own birth. Many of our mothers had very traumatic experiences in which they were very disempowered. Many people have watched films, even comedy shows like Friends, or, you know, movies where birth is portrayed as very, very frightening and dramatic and scary and disempowering and a bit yucky. And many people have watched television programs like One Born Every Minute, which frame birth as an emergency. And that's part of their remit as program makers, but it's not very helpful to you if you're pregnant and you're watching programs like that. There's actually been quite a lot of research done into One Born Every Minute and how it portrays birth, which I was very interested to read. I couldn't believe that people were researching One Born Every Minute, but it's actually fascinating. And one of the things that they, the researchers concluded was that, totally absent from lots of those programs is women being given a choice. You never see women being told, being offered choices. You rarely see it. So all of those things don't really help us as we come to prepare for birth. So we need to have a little bit of an unpicking session of what ideas we've got about birth, and why we feel how we feel, and whether or not some of those ideas and visions we have in our head of what birth is actually going to be like are accurate or true. And one way that you can counter that is by watching birth films. And in the last 10 years since I've been writing about birth, there's been an absolute explosion of birth imagery and birth films on social media through things like Instagram and Facebook. And lots of people now having birth photographers or even birth filmmakers at their birth. So there's lots of opportunities to look at birth in a different way. And I highly recommend that if you're feeling nervous about birth, it can be difficult to watch birth films. If you Google watch birth films, it actually comes up, one of the first results in Google is a link on the Positive Birth Movement website, where there's a few birth films there that I've specially selected to be kind of like entry-level birth films for people who are a bit scared. So just films that you can watch where everything goes fine and you don't necessarily see the baby crowning and things like that that can make people feel a bit worried, especially if they're already feeling a bit nervous about birth. So watch some birth films, look at some birth images, challenge those preconceptions that you have about what birth is going to be like, and think about what you bring to birth. And another thing that I want to talk about today, I'm just trying to see the clock, but I will take questions in about 5 minutes, so I'll just whiz through a few more thoughts about birth in a pandemic. Obviously, I think a lot of people watching this who are pregnant will know about oxytocin. But oxytocin is really important. Sometimes people ask me, what should I pack in my birth bag? And my joke that I always do is, well, it doesn't matter what you take to the hospital with you as long as you take oxytocin, because oxytocin is the only thing that you cannot give birth without. Oxytocin is the birth hormone. And if you don't make oxytocin yourself with your own body, then you'll be given oxytocin, because your baby won't be born unless you've got oxytocin to make that process happen. And oxytocin is known as the shy hormone, and this is really relevant to the situation that we're in at the moment, because one of the enemies of oxytocin is adrenaline. So if you feel afraid or anxious or scared, then you are going to start producing that fight flight hormone, adrenaline, and that's going to inhibit your body's production of oxytocin. So you need to think about this and think, first of all, where am I going to give birth? If you're low risk and you feel confident, and the home birth service is still running in your area, because some of them have been affected by the current situation, highly recommend considering home birth, or considering staying at home, and then if you change your mind in labour, then going to hospital, because that is another way round to do it. Because you're more likely quite often to produce oxytocin in an environment where you feel deeply safe. Sometimes I think people think they feel safe in hospital, but what the part of them that feels safe is that upper part of their brain, the very analytical neocortex. But deeper down in the mammalian part of their brain, the mammal part of their brain doesn't feel safe at all. But the neocortex is saying, this is a very nice hospital, isn't it? Look at all those nice beeping machines. How wonderful. What a perfect place to give birth. And the mammalian part of the brain is going, get me out of here. Because, like cats and dogs and other mammals, we like to give birth in a nice cozy place, in a place that's calm, in a place that's dimly lit, in a place that doesn't have very many interruptions. And we are mammals. We need to think about this. So If you can, think about how can I give birth in a more homely environment. Maybe that might be home, or it might be your nearest birth centre. Some people aren't aware of birth centres. When I come to the baby show, I quite often hear from people who didn't really know that there was that middle option. So do check that out. And if you do have to give birth in hospital because of the pandemic, or because you transfer there from your home birth because there's some issues, or because you want more pain relief, or because you know, you have a health condition that means that you absolutely do need to be in hospital, then there are lots of things you can do. First of all, you can think about how can, you know, when you get into the room where you're going to give birth, think about it with your partner. How can we make this environment more conducive to the production of oxytocin? Oxytocin likes no interruptions. It doesn't like being asked questions. It likes to be cozy. And basically, you know, one way of thinking about it is, you know, some people say the same energy that got the baby in gets the baby out. So loving, romantic, sexual energy is brilliant for giving birth. You can help yourself along in this respect because you can get yourself into that mindset. Your partner can help by, if they're with you, they can be, you know, giving you some really loving words, some loving touch, some massage, some eye contact. And partners, get them on board with this whole thing about oxytocin. Partners quite often really want to know, what can I do in this birth situation? Well, you can be what I call the guardian of oxytocin. That is your main job. So you're in the hospital room, the midwife comes in to check something and she puts the lights on. Make sure you're thinking oxytocin when she's gone, or even while she's still in there, put the dimmers back down again, or draw the curtains again. You know, keep thinking, how can I make this environment more like the place, you know, where we would make love? So take your electric tea lights, take your battery operated fairy lights. Take in the things that comfort you. Take in an eye mask so that you can shut out the world. Take earplugs or Bluetooth, what do you call them? You know, Bluetooth things that you put in your ears. I can't think of the word. And, you know, try and shut yourself down. Maybe a big blanket that you can wrap around yourself, something that's meaningful to you, maybe something that somebody's gifted you or that you feel safe and cozy in. I just saw a question coming in, and I am going to take a couple of questions, so I'll scroll back up to it, but just to make sure I haven't missed anything important. There are lots and lots more tools that you can use in the Positive Birth Rescue Pack, which is in the album section, or just message me if you can't find it. It's pay what you can afford, and the cheapest price is £12.50, and there's loads more ideas in that pack, which I just feel like time is ticking on, and I'm going to run out. But I hope that's a little bit helpful. And let me just look at this question that just came in, because otherwise it's going to disappear. So Nisha says, Millie, what's the advice for women who have to go through inpatient induction procedures, e.g. Foley balloon, pessary, rupture of water? My partner will not be allowed until active labour. Okay, so, well, one of the first things that you can do is make sure that that's 100% necessary, which, you know, that's a different conversation that I'm happy to have with you off of here if you want, Nisha, because there are different reasons why people are being induced, but there might be other options. So always keep your options open. And that's another thing that I wanted to say today, is do remember that you do have human rights in childbirth. There's an excellent organisation called Birth Rights who are supporting women in the pandemic, who are very, very busy at the moment, dealing with questions like, I've been told I have to do this, what are my actual options and what is my legal position? Because you do have rights to decide what happens to your body, even though we are going through this unprecedented situation. So, but if you do have to be induced, then there are lots of things that you can do. You can still think about oxytocin, but in regards to specifically not having your partner there with you, one thing that you can do is you can get your partner to write some things for you or record some messages for you, so that you can maybe open them at intervals, little letters that you can open at intervals during that process, or little recordings that you can listen to at intervals during that process. In the rescue pack, there is a script for partners, so your partner can record a specific hypnobirthing script for you to listen to. So there's some ideas there. I hope that helps. I know that's really, really hard and not an ideal situation. And also it's always worth asking, you know, more questions about, you know, if you feel particularly vulnerable, and maybe there is a specific reason for that, perhaps a previous trauma of some kind or a previous traumatic birth, it is worth flagging that up to your care providers and just saying, I feel I need to be more supported. What else can you do to help me? Are you sure that my partner can't be with me during this process? I feel that I'm not going to be strong enough, or I won't be able to cope without that extra support. Keep talking to people. Take your question higher if you need to, up the ladder. And if necessary, you know, come find me. I'm always happy to help people with questions like that and put them in touch with the right people. And birthrights as well, I'll say again, are absolutely brilliantly helpful. Chloe, whilst I'm building myself up to be empowered in birth and doing what I want, what if you come up against lack of control in the birthing process? Such as someone says something you don't want to do, but the language makes you feel forced to do it. Oh, that's a good question, Chloe. I think one thing that's really, really important and helpful to do is just to take time, okay? Unless you were in a life or death emergency situation, which is incredibly, incredibly rare in the birth room. And if you are in a life or death situation, you're unlikely to be worried about empowerment, etc. You're just going to want to listen to the medics. If you're not in that situation, take time. There's, you know, the BRAINS acronym, that's really helpful. And this is in the rescue pack as well. You know, pause, ask yourself and ask the other people. This is BRAINS, BRAINS. So it's a really good way of remembering it. B, what are the benefits of what you're suggesting? What are the risks of what you're suggesting? Everything has risks. BRAINS, what are the benefits? What are the risks? Why have I gone completely blank on the letter A? This is a great thing about being live, isn't it? What are the benefits? What are the risks? I'll come back to A, and then I is what's my intuition telling me, and N is what if we do nothing? So ask, you know, what about if we don't do anything? What if we wait half an hour? What would happen then? And also another really important thing to do, I think, is to ask for the evidence. So if someone is recommending a course of action, just, you know, make sure you know that it's okay to say, could you possibly tell me on what evidence that you're making that recommendation? You do have the right, Chloe, to, you know, to ask questions, to ask for more time, to say, could you just go out the room for a minute and give me and my partner 5 minutes to have a chat? Any of those things that just give you a little bit more time and give you a little bit of a moment are fine, like I say, unless there's an emergency, in which case, obviously, you wouldn't feel the need to do that. Hope that helps. B-R-A, why can't I think what the A is? That's so bad, isn't it? I'm going to have to put the A in the comments because I've totally gone blank. Ruthie, I'd love to have a more positive experience as I have to have C-sections. Brilliant question. Any advice? So yes, you know, cesarean birth is sometimes gets overlooked because it's like all this polarization of, you know, positive birth is this amazing, perfect, candlelit home water birth, you know, and everything else, you know, it can't be positive. Ruthie, cesarean birth can be absolutely amazingly positive. It's so, so important that people know this. And when you have a cesarean birth, you have loads of options. It's not a case that, you know, you have lots of choices unless you have a cesarean, then you don't have any choices. You can make a whole, and I advise everybody who's pregnant right now to make a cesarean birth plan, even if a cesarean birth is absolutely 100% the kind of birth that they never, ever, ever want to experience. Face up to it. And this is another piece of advice that I've got on my list of things to give you today, which is make a plan. Make a plan A for your perfect birth, whatever that may mean to you. But if, you know, it's worth thinking, what's my plan B? What if this happens? What if that happens? Because we mustn't get into this situation where we just think we have this carved in stone birth plan, and then anything else that diverts from that is, well, you know, you just sort of surrender to what's happening. There are lots and lots and lots of things that, you know, you can hold on to throughout any birth scenario. One good example of that is skin to skin after your baby's been born. Well, no matter what kind of birth you have, or hope to have, or end up having, that moment of skin to skin after the birth can be so transformative for you, for your bonding with your baby, for your emotions, for your memories. It's such an important moment. And there shouldn't be really very many situations in which you can't have skin to skin after the birth. In the unlikely event that it doesn't happen, I still recommend like almost postponing that golden hour. If things are very, very difficult for you in the moments after birth, or there are some health problems, for example, then think about how, you know, you can still have that golden hour, that still have that bonding time, but just at a later date. Some people even do something they call rebirthing, where they, you know, kind of like one person whose story is in the Positive Birth book, got the birth pool out at home. She was going to have a home birth. There was problems with her baby. She ended up having to have a very serious emergency cesarean. And a couple of weeks later, when everything had calmed down, they got the birth pool out, they filled it up, they put the fairy lights on, they played the music they wanted to play. They got in the pool with the baby, they said some nice words to the baby that meant something to them, and pulled the baby up, you know, skin to skin, and had that kind of experience then that they had missed at the birth. So it's never too late to think about, how can I make this experience meaningful for me? And with cesarean, Ruthie, just going back to your question, you know, have a Google of woman-centered cesarean is one thing it's called, or natural cesarean it's sometimes called. So there are lots of options there where you can watch the birth if you want to, if they lower the screen, or you can have obviously you can have skin to skin, you can have music playing. There are lots of options in cesarean. And another thing that's really nice, I think, about woman-centered cesarean is that there's a sort of slight attitude shift in the people, in the healthcare professionals, in the idea being that this is a special moment. This isn't a clinical moment. This isn't an operation. This is birth. And many clinicians will have that mindset. This is not criticism, but it's just that there are ways of, you know, sort of asking for that to be sort of dialed up a bit, if you like, so that you really feel like there's a sense of reverence in your birth space and that your birth is really special. So I hope that helps. Irina, I'm a first-time mum, decided to go for home from home birth centre at the hospital, as I'm not sure whether home birth is not going to be risky. Read that 30%, oh, hang on, sorry, of first-time mums are being transported via emergency. However, I'm much more relaxed at home and really do not like hospitals in general, so really struggling on the final decision. Any advice? Yes, I do have some advice, Irina. Definitely plan the home birth. Go for that idea. And then if you are, you know, if you have to transfer, you know, many people transfer and they still have a positive experience. You've still got all those memories of your labour at home, maybe being in the pool, maybe sort of, you know, having a nice time with your partner, or, you know, making a cake or whatever it might be. Yes, people do make cakes when they're in labour. And, you know, so you have that. It doesn't necessarily, you know, the transfer is it's unusual for the transfer to be dramatic and you know, scary. Quite often it's just, maybe labour's just going on and you're getting tired, or maybe you feel you just really want to have an epidural. So this idea of transferring, you know, you mustn't, I don't think you should be scared of that. Lots of people have positive experiences of home birth and then transferring. But also, you know, if you start at home and you actually decide, well, do you know what, I don't want to have this baby at home, I'm not feeling safe here, I want to go to hospital, well then it's much easier to do it that way around, from a sort of point of view of the logistics of you know, the paperwork side of things, than to be at a hospital and suddenly say, I'm not enjoying myself here, I've decided to go and have a home birth. So that would be my advice there. Let me just have a little look. There's Lola saying, I did not know about birth centres. Shocking how many people don't know about birth centres. That actually really gets on my wick. But I'm glad that you do now, Lola, and I hope other people listening to this get that message. birth centres, they quite often they're midwife led. Sometimes they're called midwife led units, so they're very you know, quite often very home from home. Some of them are beautiful. I've seen some photos of some of them in the UK, which are absolutely incredible. They have beautiful birth pools with all different coloured lights and art on the walls, and you know, and some of them are literally like a 1 minute walk from the obstetric unit. You know, some of them are freestanding, so they're like a couple of miles down the road, and you'd have to transfer if you wanted to go to the obstetric unit. But a lot of them are actually alongside the actual hospital, so there's no problem there at all for people who are a bit worried about being far away from hospital. Stephanie, I'm going to have to stop in a minute. It's really nice seeing all these questions though. Stephanie, I'd really like a home birth, but as a first time mum, my husband is not keen for the elevated risk levels. Any advice? We are 15 minutes from the local labour ward. Thanks in advance. I'm not sure why he thinks there's elevated risk levels. Is that because you're a first time mum? Because there's the birthplace study showed a very, very small increased risk of adverse outcomes for the baby, but showed that for the mum, even for a first time mum, home birth is actually safer than obstetric unit or than obstetric unit. So it's worth getting him to have a look, and it's worth everyone having a look at the NICE guidelines, NICE, on place of birth. So just Google NICE guidelines place of birth and have a look, because they set it out very clearly. It's not difficult to understand the information. It's very clearly laid out, and they've got lots of tables that actually show the evidence on home birth and on the risks. So maybe spend some time having a look at that and actually get a clear picture of the risk. And maybe talk to your midwives and get your husband to talk to midwives, because being 15 minutes from the local labour ward is not a very long journey. There are, you know, midwives who come to your home birth are trained to see problems from a long distance. So it's, you know, it's 15-minute transfer time is not very long to get to hospital if it's needed. And also midwives, home birth midwives, are also experts in birth, and they know what to do if there are problems. So it's really personal, and if your husband isn't on board with home birth, then that's difficult, and you've got to, you know, you've got to come to decisions where everybody feels good, because it's his birth experience as well. Everybody's got to be on the same page. But do have a look at the NICE guidelines and the evidence behind home birth, maybe perhaps with him, and I hope that helps reassure him. And if not, then, you know, do think in this mindset that I've been talking about a little bit today about home birth in the hospital. Some people are having to think about home birth in the hospital at the moment, because some home birth is less available than it normally is in the UK because of the pandemic. And that is all about mindset, and it's all about thinking about how can I create this bubble around myself, how can I create a better birth environment. But it's not just about the environment, it's also about what you're bringing into that environment in terms of your mindset. And hypnobirthing can really help with that. There's some hypnobirthing downloads in the Positive Birth Rescue Pack, but also just any kind of visualization that you can do, any kind of, you know, positive talkings to yourself that you can do, birth affirmations, that kind of thing, that can just help you to really build up your resilience and your strength. And then pull your blanket down over you, or put your eye mask on, or put your earphones in and listen to the music, and just try to get the lights down low and transport yourself, because when you have a baby, you do actually go on quite a journey internally, and when it's all really working is when you've got in the zone. You know, that's when the oxytocin starts to flow. And so wherever you give birth, or wherever you know, even if you're at home and then you transfer, wherever you are, you've got to get into that zone. And in some ways, it's not about getting into that zone and thinking of that this is the project, get into the zone. How do I do that? What it is, it's about stopping yourself being brought out of that zone. And that can be more of a problem in hospital birth, because you get the knocks at the door and the interruptions and the lights and the beeping and people asking you questions, and it can be, not always, but can be a less peaceful experience that pulls you out, keeps pulling you out of that bubble, of that zone. So you've got to try and think, you know, and your partner can be really useful on that. Like I've said, how can you stay in that zone and not minimize your interruptions and being brought out of the zone. Oh, thanks for everyone for saying alternatives. I've only written a book about it, but just my mind just went, no, I'm not going to tell you what the A in brain stands for. But anyway, thank you. Yes, so what are the benefits? What are the risks? What are the alternatives? What is my intuition telling me? And what happens if I do nothing? Okay, I'm going to have to stop because I think I only have 30 minutes. And I'm sorry that I can't answer all of these questions. There's lots more at the bottom. The pack, my internet dropped out. Where do you say we can get the pack from? Well, message me if you can't find it, because I know there's some technical problems today, but there's a section of this Facebook group called Albums, and it's in there under Positive Birth Movement. Oh my gosh, there's so many more questions and lots of people reminding me that A is for alternatives. I'm so sorry about that. And I'm sorry that I can't answer the rest of the questions, but if you want to message me, then you can message me, and I'm always happy to chat to people. And I'm also running a course which runs for 4 weeks, which is called The Circle. And it's a small group of people who work with me through, I send you modules to work through, but we also have a Facebook group with about 20 or so people in there. So it's very small, and we all work together for 4 weeks, and I support you and answer all your questions every single day for a month. So if you want to be part of the circle, message me and I will give you the information. And it's really lovely to be here, and have a lovely baby show, everybody, and lots of love, and speak soon. Bye.